Hey everybody, wanted to do a quick video here talking a little bit about the different fronts. I know I've seen on the forum a lot of different discussion about wide 9, base wide 9, how we run wide 9. There's a lot of talk about wide 9. So I wanted to address this a little bit. One thing to understand is we play predominantly a 4-3 under or over. I'll show the differences between those and what that means as far as alignments and things. So here, this is from the very first week against the Vikings. We're in a traditional, our base 4-3 under. Now what that means, what's that referring to, is that this defensive tackle who's in a one technique being on the strong side of the center in this gap, he normally, the defensive tackle on in a just base 4-3 is going to be in a 3 technique, which is outside shade of the guard. But in an under, you move him over to a 1 technique. Your 1 technique on the weak side, that is normally here, he moves to a 3 technique, and then your backside defensive end is either in sometimes a 5 technique or a 7 technique being out here. We generally put him in a wide 9. So that's where we refer to a wide 9 is going to be the Leo over here. And then you take your Sam backer. The D end on this side in a traditional 4-3 is going to be out here on head up, usually on the tight end head up or just outside the tight end. And instead you move him inside to more of a 5 technique. Armstead's a little bit more in like a 5-eye, or excuse me. And then your Sam backer is lined up head up on the outside of the tight end. Now they've done a 2 tight end set over here. But this is our Sam backer on this side. I'll highlight him. That's not supposed to be a line. Sorry. This is your Sam backer. He's out here. And then your 2 linebackers are stacks. This is what we refer to as stack backers, and while your Mike and your Will are interchangeable. How this goes as far as gap responsibility, the idea is because now you have a 5 alignment across, that your edges are protected. So this Sam backer is going to be responsible for the edge, hard edge on this side. Your Leo on the back side is responsible for the hard edge gap on this side. And then usually this tackle is responsible for here. He's responsible here, 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 and then here. And this safety is usually actually responsible for this gap. So that's how it looks as far as gap filling. And again, these linebackers are like if it's a strong side run, he's going to be here first. This guy's going to check his gap and then look to scrape across. Same here. He fills his gap, but then will scrape if it's a run to the outside. And so that's what our 4-3 under looks like. And so here I'm going to jump to a different screenshot here. Here we're in our 4-3 over. What you're going to notice is that the set that we normally have in an under is on the weak side this time. You see the tight end is over here, so I'll highlight the tight end. He's on this side. And now we've moved, our Sam backer is on the weak side. Now, I know that's kind of a contradiction in terms. You say a Sam stands for strong side and he's now on the weak side, but in our 4-3 over, that's what we do. We end up moving this, and what it does, it protects you against counter runs to the weak side. One thing that a 4-3 under can be susceptible to is counter runs to the weak side, because you end up with a defender so wide out you can kick him out and run inside. So here, when you come with a 4-3 over, your Sam backer's over here and he's got this gap, he's got this gap. Now the big difference is this, what would normally be a 1 tech on the center, he's kind of moved into more of a nose tackle, which would be a 0 technique, and he's just going to 2 gap. He's going to be responsible to hold this this center in 2 gap, and who would be your Mike, he's gonna kind of read both A gaps. That's what his job is to do: read and then scrape, read and then scrape. And then off that, he's got this gap. Your linebacker's got here, and then your D end is responsible for an outside contain. Now, usually there'll be another safety that's off the screen here that he's going to come up and be responsible for really wide outside. But this is a 4-3 over. Now, we actually probably played this as much or more than our 4-3 under. The difference here is that your Leo is no longer in a wide 9. but you have extra protection on your edge, because you have him, you have a linebacker, and then you're probably going to have a safety over here. And now your weak side edge is really contained because, again, this Sam backer over here is in a wide 9 position. I mean, he's not D-end with his foot or with his hand in the dirt, but he's holding the same responsibility. In a run, he's gonna look to take a couple steps up, and he's just gonna take a couple steps up here and then set an edge. That's what our 4-3 under and over in base normally looks like. So the questions become: are we going to switch to more of a 4-3 wide 9? Here's a picture of Detroit back when they had Schwartz as their head coach. Running this wide 9. And so here you can see that they have these two defensive, why is it not a circle? These two defensive ends in this wide 9 set. And so what their job in this is going to be is that they're going to look to take some hard steps here. They have very specified launch points. So they're going to come up and set an edge. And so they're going to try and keep everything within these areas. They're trying to keep it all in this box, so that their linebackers, you see 54, 55, 59, can swallow everything up in here. Now, the trick is with this, when you go to this defense, is your interior guys now become space eaters. This one tech, his responsibility is going to be whichever way the run goes, try and grab 2 linemen and hold that down, almost like a 3-4 nose tackle. And same with this 3 tech over here. This is Sue. Now, they kind of tried to get him a little more open, but his job is going to be to just eat up this guard and not let him get to any linebackers. Because these linebackers, a lot of them now are going to be in two gapping. They're going to have to read one way or the other, fill and go, and scrape. One thing this does to your linebackers is it does make them more susceptible to runs inside. You run this wide 9. One reason you do this is to set hard edges against outside zones. So that way, because so much of the outside zone is, can you get outside? And if you can't, because of over pursuit, cut inside. But now they're trying to say, we're not going to let you outside, and we're not going to over pursue. So we're forcing it back up into the middle, and then it's to where all these big bodies are. But that means your linebackers are more likely to be taking on linemen. You can see over here, the way the Giants have this, they have 1, 2, 3, 4 guys on this side of the center. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 guys on that side of the line. So they have a numbers advantage, and they're going to be able to get a hat on a hat. So that means, like your backside linebacker, like this guy, he's going to have to scrape and fill somewhere. Or one of these linebackers is going to have to take on a blocker, shed that blocker, and fill the hole. So it puts a little bit more stress on your linebackers for having to be able to take on linemen. The way our linebackers are, you can see these are some fairly large guys in here. They're set up to do this. We're not so much. If you look at then, going back to, going back to our guys, they're not, these interior guys are not designed. We didn't pick guys that are there to take on guards all the time. And especially with the signing of Quan Alexander, he's not a big guy to take on guards. We want to keep these guys free and be able to shoot, to have one gap responsibility and not worry about trying to stack and shed. So personally, I don't see us transitioning to a base wide 9. We go into a wide 9. I've seen us go to wide 9 in base, but that was only when it was against the Vikings, when they came out in an empty set. We did similar thing against Seattle. We went out into, they motioned out into an empty set, and then we shifted to a wide 9 more for pass rush. So we do this more for pass rush than we ever do for run defense. So as far as us shifting to this full time, honestly, I don't see it happening a whole lot. We did do something similar to that for a couple games when we had Malcolm Smith, Fred Warner, and Reuben Foster all active. It wasn't a full-on wide 9. We were in a 4-3, a base 4-3 with three linebackers off. We weren't in an under or an over. We were more 4-3 odd, and we did have our strong side D end was more in a wide nine, but it wasn't like something we were going to use as a steady diet. So I hope this kind of clears up some of that the thoughts about fronts and what we're going to be doing or what we could do, especially with D Ford in here. I see him as, if he was going to be in base, I see him as this Sam Backer type. This is Nzioche over here, where he's going to be setting this edge, or if we're in man coverage, we're in straight man coverage. If when we were in base, we would have our Sam Backer would blitz. I could see them putting Ford in the game for those situations. We didn't see a lot of passes out of base. I think we were in base like 40 to 45% of the time, and then the majority of that teams were running against us. So it's not like we're going to be seeing 20, 25 passes a game out of our base set. But this, and kind of side note here, this is why they also talk about keeping Solomon Thomas at Leo, because we run 4-3 over almost as much as we run under. They like the flexibility and his ability to come over here onto the strong side, isolated out alone, where he could be doubled by a tight end or a tackle, because he does very well. He holds his ground very well when we do that, and so it allows us the versatility to go 4-3 over or under, protect ourselves from the weak side and the strong side with him. And so that's kind of a side note of why I think some people freaked out in the presser when they started talking about keeping Solomon Thomas as a base Leo. It makes sense for rundowns. Generally your first down, as long as it's not first and long, is going to be a run down. You're going to see a run about 75 to 80% of the time if you're in base. If they're going to pass it out of on first down, most of the time they're going to come out in a 3 wide or 2 tight end, something that when we see 2 tight end, most of the time we counter with a nickel unless it's first down, being the rundown. But even then, if it's like 1st and 15 after a penalty or something and they come out in 2 tight ends, we respond with a nickel. So just to kind of give a heads up on that of why they're talking about that, because if you have a guy that's a little bit smaller, like a Ford, as your base down Leo, you can't do a 4-3 over. It's just not going to be possible. I mean, he's just not going to be the size to be able to line up over here, whereas he does as a Sam, because he's not going to be asked to do nearly as much. So, I'm interested to see where they use him, especially on base downs. If he's on the field on base downs, it doesn't make sense for him to really come off the field too much on base. But here's kind of just a discussion on fronts. If you have any thoughts, comments, things to add, go ahead, throw that in there. Also, we can talk about it on 49erswebzone.com in the forum section. Thanks.